March 1945, Western Germany. The war is still ongoing, yet everyone gathered in that room already knows its conclusion. The dining hall once served a modest German officers' club. In earlier years, wine flowed freely here while arguments over cavalry tactics filled the air. Now the glass in the windows is fractured. The chandeliers give off a tired light, and the walls retain a faint mixture of smoke and disinfectant. A long wooden table dominates the room. Along one side sit American officers, colonels, majors, intelligence personnel, their uniforms immaculate, their posture controlled, their eyes constantly alert. Facing them are captured German generals and senior staff officers. They wear no insignia, no ceremonial swords, no medals, just men. Between the two groups stand plates of food that none of them truly desire. This meal is neither generosity nor celebration. It is a deliberate calculation. The Americans are watching. They want to see how German officers conduct themselves when command has been removed, when authority is gone, but personal dignity remains, when they are handled as professionals rather than criminals. The German officers are fully aware of this. Their conversations are quiet, restrained, each word carefully chosen. Years of staff discipline still shape them. Their backs remain straight. Their hands rest neatly beside their plates. They ask nothing. Then the door opens. All conversation stops. General George S. Patton steps inside. There is no announcement, no salute, no escort, only Patton. Ivory-handled pistols at his sides, helmet under one arm, boots still marked with dried mud from the front. He does not look first toward his own officers. His gaze goes immediately to the Germans. For an instant, barely perceptible, something passes between them. Not acknowledgement of rank, not victory or defeat, but recognition of kind. Patton moves to the head of the table and sits without asking. An American colonel begins to rise, hesitates, then settles back into his chair. Patton studies the room slowly, the way a commander studies ground. "Gentlemen," he finally says, his tone even, almost casual, "I hope the food is acceptable." There is no mockery, no malice. A German general inclines his head. "It is sufficient, General." Patton gives a slight smile. "Good. Hungry soldiers don't think well." Several American officers exchange brief looks. The phrasing is unexpected. Patton eats in silence for several minutes. No one speaks. Cutlery makes soft sound against china. The Germans eat carefully, as though even the act itself might be judged. Patton listens. He always listens. He observes the way one German officer cuts his meat, measured, precise. Another pauses before every bite, as if awaiting orders that will never come. Their eyes are constantly moving, noting exits, faces, distances. These men are not civilians wearing uniforms. They are professionals. Eventually, Patton sets down his napkin and leans back slightly. He neither raises his voice nor strikes a pose. He speaks as if making idle conversation. "Which of you," he says, looking directly at the German side of the table, "commanded a division during the winter fighting in the Ardennes?" The atmosphere tightens. The question alone carries danger. The Battle of the Bulge is recent. Too recent. Its loss is still raw. A German lieutenant general hesitates, then gives a small nod. "I did." Patton nods, as though confirming a known detail. "You suffered fuel shortages," he says. "It is not a question." "Yes." "Our infantry held longer than our armored units." "Yes." Patton tilts his head. "Why?" The German general blinks. This is not interrogation. This is not intelligence collection. It is something else. "We lack sufficient fuel for maneuver," the German answers cautiously, "and your air superiority." Patton raises a hand gently. "That part one know." He leans forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I want to understand why you committed your final armored reserves there instead of withdrawing them 2 days earlier." The German general freezes, his fork suspended in midair. One by one, other German officers turn toward him. The question is wrong, not ethically, but professionally. It is too detailed, too accurate. That decision had been debated in secrecy, behind closed doors, with maps that never left headquarters. Even many German officers were unaware of the specifics, and yet Patton speaks as if he had been present. The German general slowly places his fork down. Because, he says after a pause, we believe a delay would disrupt your operational tempo. Patton nods once. And when did you realize it would not? The German exhales softly. Within 12 hours. Patton smiles, not with satisfaction, but with something closer to regret. Too late, he says. The German general lifts his eyes. Yes, he replies. Too late. Silence spreads across the table. The Americans are puzzled. This does not resemble a victor questioning the defeated. It sounds like two commanders dissecting a failed maneuver. Then Patton asks the question, the one that changes everything. He does not raise his voice. He does not lean back. He does not perform. He simply asks, which officer did you relieve afterward? The words fall quietly and then explode. For a moment, the German general remains silent. His jaw tightens. His gaze drops to the table. Around him, the other German officers stiffen, not with fear, but with something closer to shame, because this is the real question. Not about Berlin, not about Hitler, not about ideology. This is a question commanders ask one another in private, without ceremony, without mercy. The question beneath all others. Who bore the cost? At last, the German general speaks. My chief of staff. An American major draws in a sharp breath. A colonel's brow tightens. That detail appears nowhere in the reports. Patton nods slowly. A capable officer. The German closes his eyes for a brief moment. Yes. Patton does not return the nod. He does not smile. Then you dismiss the wrong man. The room locks into stillness. This is no longer a meal. This is no longer conversation. This is professional judgment crossing enemy lines. The German general looks up, stunned. Pardon me? Patton continues, his voice steady, stripped of emotion. You do not remove the officer who tells you the truth under pressure. You remove the one who persuades you that time still exists when it does not. No American interrupts. No one dares. The German general's expression hardens, not with anger, but with something far more disturbing, recognition. You believe, the German says carefully, that I was protecting my authority. Patton holds his gaze. I believe you were protecting your conscience. Silence returns. Then something unexpected occurs. The German general inclines his head once, slowly. Yes, he says. That is correct. Around the table, the other German officers exchange glances. One allows himself the faintest, bitter smile. Patton leans back at last. There it is, he says quietly. That's the war. An American intelligence officer clears his throat, uneasy. Patton ignores him and turns again to the Germans. You fought well, Patton says. You fought hard, and you lost. There is no mockery, no triumph. You lost because your system punished professional judgment and rewarded obedience. And because wars are not won by men who wait for permission. The German general studies Patton closely. Now you speak, he says, as if you expected our defeat. Patton gives a faint smile. No, he replies. I expected you to fight exactly as you did. The words strike harder than an accusation. The German general lowers his eyes. In that moment, something deeply unsettling becomes clear. This American general did not defeat them through surprise. He defeated them through understanding. Patton rises from his chair. I thank you for your candor, he says. It is uncommon, even among allies. As he turns to leave, the German general speaks again. General Patton. Patton stops. If our positions have been reversed, the German asks cautiously, would you have acted differently? Patton considers this for a long moment. Then he answers. I would have relieved myself, he says. Or I would have won. He leaves the room. The Germans remain seated, silent. At last, one of them speaks barely above a whisper. He thinks like us. Another responds just as quietly. No, he thinks beyond us. For the first time since their capture, the German officers feel something they did not expect. Not fear, not hatred, respect, and it terrifies them. The room Patton leaves behind does not recover. No dishes are cleared. No conversation resumes. For several long seconds, the German officers remain exactly as they were, as if the air itself has hardened. Slowly, the general who spoke with Patton reaches for his glass of water. His hand trembles, not from fear, but from something far more unsettling. Certainty. Across the table, an American intelligence colonel finally exhales. Well, he mutters, that was instructive. No one laughs. An American major breaks the silence. Sir, with respect, that wasn't in the briefing. No, the colonel replies quietly. It wasn't, because what just happened wasn't authorized. The purpose of the dinner had been observation, measuring morale, assessing compliance, gathering psychological indicators. Instead, Patton reversed the experiment. He did not study them. He tested them. And worse, he judged them. As the Americans begin collecting papers and signaling the end of the meal, one German officer leans toward the general Patton had questioned. You should not have answered him, he whispers in German. The general shakes his head slowly. It would not have mattered, he replies. He already knew. The realization spreads across the German side of the table like a low fever. Patton had not asked in order to humiliate. He had asked to confirm. Later that night, several miles away in a makeshift headquarters, American officers gather around a field table cluttered with maps and coffee cups. The atmosphere is tight. An intelligence captain speaks first. With all due respect to General Patton's instincts, what he did tonight crossed a line. A lieutenant colonel nods. That discussion came dangerously close to validating German operational logic, which is precisely the problem. The captain snaps. We're meant to dismantle that logic, not admire it. Silence follows. Then another voice speaks, a man who has remained quiet until now. He wasn't admiring it. All eyes turn. It is General Omar Bradley. Bradley folds his hands calmly. Patton wasn't praising them. He was diagnosing them. The captain frowns. Diagnosing what, sir? Bradley exhales slowly. Why they lost, and why they would make the same mistakes again if they ever fought another war. The words hang in the air longer than anyone finds comfortable. Another officer shifts in his chair. Are we really discussing another war already? Bradley does not answer immediately. He looks down at the map. Eastern Europe is marked differently. Occupied zones trace in thick red lines. Patton is, Bradley says at last. Meanwhile, Patton is alone. He sits in his quarters, boots off, revolvers placed neatly on the table beside him. He pours himself a drink, but does not touch it. His expression reveals nothing. There is no satisfaction in Patton's expression, no sense of victory, only irritation, because the German general's answer confirmed what Patton already suspected. Wars are not ended by victory alone. They end by replacement. And the men who will replace Germany's defeated officer corps will not be amateurs. Patton returns, again and again, to the question he asked. Which officer did you relieve afterward? It was never idle curiosity. It was a test. And the answer had failed. That same night, a memorandum begins moving quietly through SHAF channels. Subject, General Patton, conduct during POW engagement. The wording is precise, neutral, carefully restrained. While General Patton's engagement yielded notable insights, concerns have been raised regarding tone, implications, and perception among Allied observers. Translated, Patton made people uneasy, not the Germans. The Americans, because Patton's greatest offense is not insubordination. It is clarity. And clarity is something bureaucracies distrust. 2 days later, the German general is summoned again. This time there are no armed guards, no glaring lamps. Just a quiet room, 2 chairs, a pot of coffee. Across from him sits an American military intelligence officer, notebook open, voice deliberately neutral. "General," the officer begins, "we'd like to clarify several aspects of your conversation with General Patton." The German inclines his head politely. "Did General Patton offer assurances of favorable treatment?" "No." "Did he suggest post-war cooperation?" "No." "Did he express admiration for German command doctrine?" The German pauses. "Admiration," he repeats, considering the word. "No." The officer looks up. "Then how would you describe it?" The German chooses his words carefully. "He treated us," he says at last, "as soldiers who failed, not as criminals who sinned." The officer writes this down, then hesitates. "And how did that make you feel?" The German general meets his gaze. Accountable. The word unsettles the room. Later that afternoon, a junior intelligence analyst reviews transcripts from the dinner. One line has been circled in red. "You don't remove the man who tells you the truth under pressure." The analyst frowns. He has read hundreds of interrogations, thousands of pages of doctrine. This line troubles him because it does not belong in a war that is supposed to be over. That evening, Patton is invited, politely, firmly, to attend a meeting. Bradley is there. Eisenhower is not. Bradley wastes no time. "George," he says, "you scared the hell out of intelligence." Patton snorts. "Good. Maybe they'll stop mistaking reports for understanding." Bradley leans forward. "You validated German professional identity. That matters." Patton meets his eyes. "I dismantled it." Bradley raises an eyebrow. "By telling them they fought well?" "No," Patton replies. "By showing them why they lost." Bradley exhales. "You're already fighting the next war in your head, aren't you?" Patton doesn't deny it. "You don't stop being a soldier just because paperwork says so. And neither do they." Bradley studies him. "And who do you think they are now?" Patton answers quietly. "Men who will be asked again to choose between obedience and judgment." The implication is unmistakable. Bradley stands. "Just remember, we're still allied with people who don't appreciate that way of thinking." Patton allows a thin smile. "I've noticed." After Patton leaves, Bradley remains, staring once more at the map. One question lingers, not about Germany, but about what kind of wars reward men like Patton and which ones punish them. Back in his quarters, the German general sits on his cot, staring at the wall. The question repeats in his mind. Which officer did you relieve afterward? No one had ever asked him that. Not his superiors. Not Hitler. Not even himself. That night, he understands something that will haunt him long after the war ends. He did not lose because he lacked courage. He lost because he chose comfort over truth. And the man who exposed that failure was his enemy. That is why it hurts. And that is why he will never forget Patton. When the time comes, the story will spread. Not officially, not loudly. 3 days after the dinner, no report mentions it. No communique. No urgent memorandum. Yet the account moves anyway, past in low voices, across desks, over cigarettes, in the half-private spaces where soldiers speak when they believe no one important is listening. It starts as a whisper. Patton had dinner with them. Then it sharpens. He talked shop with German generals. Then it mutates. He respected them. That final version is the most dangerous. At SHAF headquarters, a British liaison officer hears it first from an American major. The major laughs it off. The British officer does not. He files a note, not a complaint, merely an observation. Across the Atlantic, politicians are already shaping the narrative of victory. Evil defeated. Tyranny crushed. Clean moral lines drawn in heavy ink. Patton does not draw heavy lines. He draws accurate ones. That same week, a junior American officer, fresh from West Point, idealistic, eager, approaches Patton after a briefing. "Sir," he says hesitantly, "may I ask you something?" Patton looks up from the map. "If you already have, you will—" The officer swallows. "Is it true you told a German general he relieved the wrong man?" Patton studies him for a moment. "Did I?" "Yes, sir." "Then it's true." The officer hesitates. "Sir, why say that?" Patton leans back. "Because it was— that general fought against us." "So, did you," he adds, before the officer can respond. "Before you learned how not to—" The officer has no reply. For once, there is nothing he can safely say. Patton's tone softens just slightly. "You think wars are won by good men and lost by bad ones," he says. "They aren't. They're won by men who make fewer bad decisions under pressure." He taps the map. And that's what unsettles people, because it means the enemy wasn't foolish, just wrong. That afternoon, Eisenhower receives a carefully phrased message from a political advisor attached to SHAF. The language is vague but unmistakable. Concerns are emerging: perception, optics, post-war alignment. Eisenhower rubs his temples. He knows Patton. Patton is not disloyal. He is not reckless. He is simply incapable of pretending the war means something simpler than it does. Meanwhile, the German general, now transferred to a different holding area, is approached by another prisoner, a former corps commander. "You spoke with Patton?" The man asks quietly. "Yes." "What did he want?" The general considers the question. "To understand why we failed." The other officer lets out a bitter sound. "We all know why." "Do we?" the general replies. The man hesitates. "No," the general continues. "We know the reasons we give. That is not the same thing." They sit without speaking. That night, the former corps commander says something that will never appear in any report. "He frightens me more now than he did during the war." "Why?" the general asks. "Because," the man answers, "he understands defeat better than we do." Back at headquarters, Patton is summoned once more. This time, Eisenhower is present. The room is quiet, controlled. Eisenhower does not raise his voice. He never does. "George," he says evenly, "I want to understand what you were doing." Patton stands at attention, but his eyes are alert. "I was closing a loop," he replies. Eisenhower lifts an eyebrow. "Explain." "You don't end wars by killing men," Patton says. "You end them by killing ideas. I wanted to see which ideas survive defeat." Eisenhower folds his hands. "And—" Patton answers without pause. "Too many." The words cool the room. Eisenhower exhales slowly. "You realize some people will read this as sympathy." Patton nods. "They always do. And they'll be wrong." Eisenhower studies him for a long moment. Then he says something unexpected. "Just be careful who hears you." Patton almost smiles. In the weeks that follow, Patton's name begins appearing in unfamiliar places. Not on commendation lists. Not on reprimands. On watch lists. Political advisors flag his remarks. Intelligence officers annotate his conversations. British officials exchange looks when his name is mentioned. No one acts against him. Yet, Patton is still winning. But the war is changing. The enemy is no longer only across front lines. It is across tables, across borders, across ideas. One evening, Patton sits with a small group of American officers. Drinks are poured. The mood is easy. For the first time, the war feels finite. Someone mentions the dinner. "You rattled them." One officer says. Patton shakes his head. "No, I disappointed them." The officer frowns. "How?" "They expected hatred," Patton replies. "Hatred is simple. It gives lost meaning." Another officer asks, "And respect?" Patton's expression tightens. "Respect demands accountability." The room falls quiet. That German general, Patton continues, will replay that decision for the rest of his life. Not because I accused him, because I understood him. One officer shifts uneasily. Isn't that dangerous, sir? Patton looks at him. Only if you think wars are about feelings. He stands. You want to know why that dinner mattered? He asks. They nod. Because one day, Patton says, we'll sit across tables from new enemies. And if we pretend they're monsters instead of professionals, we'll lose again. No one answers. They don't know how. That night, Patton writes his journal. Not about battles. Not about medals. About the question, which officer did you relieve afterward? He underlines it once, then adds a single line beneath it. Most men lose wars after the fighting stops. Months later, long after Patton is gone, an intelligence analyst will reread the dinner transcript. He will pause at that question, and for the first time, he will understand why some victories feel incomplete. By late April 1945, the war has begun to change shape. Guns still fire. Men still die. But the future has started whispering in rooms once too loud to hear it. Patton notices first in small ways. Invitations that never arrive. Meetings that end 5 minutes early. Conversations that stop when he enters. No one confronts him. No one accuses him. They simply adjust. At SHAF, a new protocol circulates quietly. It does not mention Patton by name. It doesn't need to. All informal interactions with senior POW officers are to be documented and conducted with approved personnel present. A muzzle disguise is procedure. Patton reads it once, folds a paper, and slips it into his pocket without comment. Later that day, he encounters a British general he has known for years. They exchange pleasantries. The smile is polite, but the eyes are guarded now. George, the man says softly, "You're becoming complicated." Patton chuckles. "I always was." The British general hesitates. This isn't about personality. It's about timing. Timing for what? For peace. Patton's smile fades. Peace doesn't care about timing. The British general sighs. That's exactly the problem. That evening, Patton receives a visitor. Colonel Charles Willoughby. Willoughby closes the door carefully before speaking. "General, word has reached Washington." Patton pours himself a drink. "It always does." "They're concerned," Willoughby says, "about your post-war posture." Patton raises an eyebrow. "I don't have a posture. I have an opinion." Willoughby chooses his words carefully. "They're afraid your opinion suggests continuity." Continuity of what? Of enemies. Patton takes a sip. Then they should stop pretending enemies vanish the moment paperwork is signed. Willoughby exhales slowly. "They believe you're legitimizing German officers." Patton sets his glass down with care. "No, I'm stripping away excuses." A knock interrupts them. An aide steps inside, visibly uneasy. "Sir, General Eisenhower requests your presence tomorrow morning." Willoughby stiffens slightly. Patton does not. Of course he does. That night, Patton sleeps badly. Not from fear, not from uncertainty, but because he knows exactly what comes next. Morning arrives cold, gray, damp. The meeting is formal. Eisenhower, Bradley, two political advisors Patton doesn't recognize. No accusations. No raised voices. Only concern. "George," Eisenhower begins, "your conduct at the dinner with the German officers has been reviewed." Patton stands motionless. "I assumed it would be." One of the advisors clears his throat. "General Patton, the issue is perception." Patton looks at him evenly. Perception has never won a war. The advisor stiffens. Bradley watches closely. Eisenhower steps in. "What they're saying, George, is that your words can be misunderstood." Patton nods once. "So can silence." Another advisor speaks. "The public narrative requires moral clarity." Patton's voice sharpens slightly. "War requires operational clarity. The two are rarely the same." Silence. Eisenhower leans back. "We need you to show more restraint." Patton considers this. From whom? From commenting on enemy professionalism. Patton answers without heat. Then you're asking me to lie. No one responds. Eisenhower rubs his temples. Just be careful. Patton nods once. The meeting ends. As Patton turns to leave, Bradley lingers. George, he says quietly, you're not wrong. Patton stops. But you're early, Bradley adds. Patton turns back. Early is better than late. Bradley exhales. Not when people are tired. Patton meets his eyes. Tired people make dangerous peace. That afternoon, the German general hears a rumor. Patton has been warned. Restricted. Watch. The general feels an unfamiliar mixture of regret, gratitude, and something close to guilt. That night, he writes in a notebook he is not meant to keep. Weeks pass. Germany collapses. Celebrations follow. Banners, toasts, smiles prepared for cameras. Patton attends fewer of them. When he does, he speaks less. Observers mistake this for compliance. It is not. It is calculation. At one reception, Patton stands with drink untouched in his hand. A young reporter approaches, eager. General Patton. The reporter asks, what was the most satisfying moment of the war? Patton studies him for a long moment, knowing when not to advance. The reporter blinks. I meant victory. So did I, Patton replies. The reporter laughs nervously and moves on. Behind Patton, two officers exchange a look. He's still dangerous. Not because of what he does, because of what he sees. Later that evening, Patton encounters Eisenhower again, this time without advisors. You're being frozen out, Eisenhower says. Patton shrugs. Cold sharpens a mind. Eisenhower hesitates. You don't regret the dinner? No, Patton replies immediately. Even now, especially now. Eisenhower sighs. History won't be kind to nuance. Patton looks out over the crowd. History isn't written by nuance. It's written by consequences. That night, in a quiet holding area, the German general learns he will soon be released. No ceremony, no apology, just documents. Before leaving, he asks for paper, not to write Patton. He knows better. He writes a single sentence. Your question did not accuse. It exposed. The note never reaches Patton. It is intercepted, filed, forgotten. Years later, historians will search for records of the dinner. They will find almost nothing. A passing reference, a fragmentary transcript, a heavily redacted memo. They will conclude it was insignificant. They will be wrong. Wars are remembered by battles. Futures are shaped by conversations no one wants preserved. And in that room, over cold food and quieter truths, Patton did something far more dangerous than insult an enemy. He understood him, and in doing so, revealed a future no one was prepared to face. By the summer of 1945, the war in Europe is officially over. Parades replace patrols. Speeches replace orders. Victory replaces urgency. And truth becomes inconvenient. Patton remains a general, still respected, still feared. But something fundamental has shifted. He is no longer invited to shape what comes next. At SHAF, new priorities dominate the briefings. Occupation, reconstruction, messaging, stability. Patton sits through one meeting in silence. Maps of Germany are divided neatly into zones. Borders drawn with confidence. Someone says, we must avoid antagonizing our new partners. Patton looks up. Partners in what? The room tightens. In peace, someone answers. Patton nods. Peace built on forgetting doesn't last. No one replies. Later that day, Patton receives a formal notice. Reassignment. No explanation beyond administrative necessity. He reads it once. Then again, he does not protest. He understands what it is. Not punishment. Containment. That night, Patton sits alone with his journal. He flips past entries, battles, losses, advances. He stops at a single line. Most men lose wars after the fighting ends. He adds another beneath it, because they confuse relief with resolution. Across town, Eisenhower reads a report from Washington. A recommendation stands out. Minimize Patton's public exposure. Eisenhower closes the folder slowly. He does not object, but he does not like it either. He remembers the dinner, not the words, but what they set in motion.